The Old Testament is fundamentally contradictory. That's the root of the problem. For example, the Old Testament contains statements endorsing monotheism. Islam is consistent with those statements. But the Old Testament also contains statements endorsing polytheism, and Christianity is more consistent with those. Is there one God or multiple gods? Some biblical passages endorse strict monotheism, others endorse polytheism. All academic scholarship on the Bible recognizes that it contains many polytheistic statements, and this is apparent when we read academic translations like the New Revised Standard Version. In Exodus 15:11, Moses declares, "Who is like you among the gods, O Yahweh?" The phrase "among the gods" implies there are multiple gods who exist, but Yahweh is superior to those other gods. Psalm 82:1 reads, "God has taken his place in the divine council. In the midst of the gods, he holds judgment." Psalm 86:8 reads, "There is none like you among the gods, O Lord." Many more passages could be cited with this same idea that multiple gods exist. This is not monotheism.
If we look in the Septuagint translation of Psalm 82:1, we see them using the plural of the word for divine, which would be adat elim, and that would exactly match the Ugaritic designation for the divine council, which was headed up by the Northwest Semitic high deity El and their consort, and comprised their 70 offspring. Interestingly enough, we see an oblique reference to this in Deuteronomy 32:8 and 9, the original version of the text that we know from the Septuagint and from the Dead Sea Scrolls, where it says, "Elyon, the Most High, divided up the nations according to the number of the Bnei Elohim, the children of God." And what was that number? This is probably based on the Table of Nations from Genesis 10, which has 70 nations, which match the 70 sons of Asherah, or children of El. And Adonai, in verse 9, receives as their inheritance his people, Jacob, his allotted share. In other words, this preserves an archaic distinction between the Most High God Elyon and Adonai, who is receiving the land of Israel as their inheritance. Until the exilic period, Adonai's purview, sovereignty, was limited on earth to the nation of Israel. They were limited in the power that they could exercise outside of that in the pre-exilic period, which is why Naaman, when he goes back to Syria, has to take 2 cartloads of Israelite soil so that he can worship Adonai, the God who is only accessible on Israelite soil. That's why David, while Saul is pursuing him, is close to the border of Israel and says that your men are forcing me to worship other gods. In other words, if you force me outside of the land of Israel, I cannot worship Adonai, because he's outside of what he calls the inheritance of Adonai. And then we have the exilees sitting alongside the river in Babylon saying, how can we sing the song of Adonai in a foreign land? And then Psalm 82 affects the universalization of Adonai by having Adonai judge the gods for negligence, condemn the other gods of the divine council, the patron deities of the other nations of the earth. So Milcom, Chemosh, Kos, the other patron deities of the earth, deposes them, condemns them to mortality, and then the psalmist cries out in the last verse, Kuma Elohim, rise up, O God, for you will inherit all nations. So Adonai's original inheritance from Deuteronomy 32:8 and 9 of the land of Israel is now expanded to all the nations of the earth.